welcome to 90 Days Till Sold. I'm your host, Pat, and that's Peter. And today we've got a really hot topic. We're talking all about getting your property sold and doing it yourself, what steps we need to take, and all that fun stuff. So, Peter, where do we start?
Well, we can start by telling you that you can sell your house yourself. It's a lot of work, and I wouldn't do it, but you can definitely do it. And we're going to talk to you about how to do it.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. We're talking all about how do we get our property valued? How do we know the value that we put on that property is going to be the guiding beacon and ultimately the starting point on getting the right price for our property and getting it sold? So where do we start, Peter?
Oh, that sounds really hard to price a property. I wonder if there's a profession that does that. Just joking. So there are three ways that you can price a property. The first is the way that the real estate agents do it, the valuers do it as well. It's the comparative pricing strategy. So basically that means you look at properties that have sold within a radius. There we go. Within a radius that matched your property. So if you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home with a double garage on a 600 square metre block in Goulburn or in Bonner, you're going to try and find properties that have sold in that suburb or in that pocket for places that are large like Goulburn that match those parameters within a little bit. So you might look at blocks that are 400 square metres to 600 square metres, maybe one garage, but the rest you'd and then you try and match it. So if it's a brick home, you really want to match it with brick and so on. And so with that strategy, you try and find 3 properties at least that are similar that have sold, not for sale, sold, within 3 or 6 months. Up to 12 months is okay with places where properties don't sell all the time, and you find one that's high. So high price where, it might be the same kind of quality or a little bit better than your home, but comparable, a middle range where you'll feel confident at the sale price, and then a low range. And if you're a real estate agent, you have to have those ranges within 10% of each other. So just say, so in Goulburn, you might have a 3-bedroom home that is going to sell for between $550,000, and with that you can go up to $605,000. So
Gotcha.
10%.
So, of course, as we know, as an agent, you've got all these paid tools. Now, please don't give them away. But as a homeowner, where can you go as a free resource to find out the value of your property, and what do you sort of recommend?
So the quickest way is to go onto your local portals. So if you're in Canberra, it's All Homes or Zengo. In most of New South Wales, it's Domain or realestate.com.au. For the rest of Australia, I'm not too sure, but you can just look up what's sold recently and close to you. And on realestate.com.au, I know that they have a map feature, so you can do that. And you can sort it by time and price and that kind of thing.
Right, so that's the price-based research method. You're talking off camera earlier about another method, like an asset replacement method. Let's talk a little bit more about how that method works.
So this is where you compare the nuts and bolts of a property. So this is what most homeowners use. It's also what most home buyers use, but they use it very differently. So a homeowner who has this 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, double-car garage, they might say the land value is $400,000. To build a brick home, it would be $300,000 or $400,000. It has solar panels, so that's $20,000 or however. So your nuts and bolts at what it's going to cost to replace, and that works pretty well to get you the highest value, because with the building costs and stuff at the moment, it just doesn't make sense. You can't replace a house for what you would pay to build.
Especially today, you've got building costs. 20 years ago, they were a third of the cost of what they are today, and trying to navigate that, they are obviously more expensive, and taking that into consideration when pricing up your property.
So if you think about like the 3-bedroom brick homes that are in the Federation homes, they will cost like $1 million to build one of those houses now.
Yeah.
And we're just not getting that in the sale prices.
Yeah.
So it works in a really nice vague way to give you an estimate, but it's not 100. It's not close to accurate. And then the way that buyers use it is they'll say it's a brick home. It's got this land size and that kind of thing. So that all adds up. But they price it on the other side, so they come really low. And so that's where buyers and sellers kind of have the disparity. because they're equating things at different scales.
I really want to make sure we get the point across here that you as a buyer, like you're obviously pricing up based on the higher end of the market because you've got a lot of energy and emotion into this. Whereas on the other end of the scale, you've got a potential buyer who are on the lower end of the spin, or they just come in and they just do the minimum this, the minimum that, the minimum this, and trying to find the middle ground between where that all sits and finding a price that is appropriate based on both ends of it is quite difficult to.
There's actually a trainer who talks about the seller's point of view there. It's called the endowment effect. So if you own it, it's very valuable to you.
Yes.
So that's what people, I guess, and that's where agents come in, because they can talk you through exactly how the nuts and bolts look like.
Yeah, 100%. So is ultimately the number sort of plucked out of the air, like just happen, or is there's sort of course there's maths and things involved in it?
So there's also one more pricing method.
Oh, sorry, yes.
No, that's okay. That's what the investors use, or a lot of the time the valuers, and that is how much it would rent for or how much money you can make from it. It's really big for commercial properties, but also, you can calculate your rental yield, and investors will use that because if it's over 6 or 7% rental yield, you're going to target investors.
Gotcha.
So the way that you do that is you calculate how much rent you'll make from it each.
It's a numbers game.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
So you calculate that into a percentage. There's a really easy ratio that I'll try and include in the link below so that you can calculate it. But ultimately, we don't pluck the number from thin air. So if I were to price a property, I would give the owners the comparative market analysis. I'd also talk them through the replacement costs, or the nuts and bolts, and the investment rental income strategy, and I'd give them evidence about why my pricing is probably close to it. But a lot of the time, the number that you get is due to negotiation between the agent and the owner, because often the owners won't agree with the agent and vice versa. When they do align, usually you'll find that a house will sell really nice and easily, and if there's a big kind of gap between that, then you work to meet your buyers and your sellers.
So what I'm really hearing is that ultimately using an agent to help you with those negotiation tactics is the right thing to do, especially when you're a owner seller, and you either have emotional investment in the property or you just don't know how to navigate your way through those negotiation tactics to get the absolute highest price of your property, and even pushing even higher.
It is that. So we're not always right. So
right.
I've been wrong a lot of times. So often I will sell a property for more than I expect. And that's always really good news for everyone.
Yeah.
So I just do my best calculations based on research, and then I'll talk frankly with the owner about what we're likely to get. So if an agent does if you get 3 agents in or 2 agents in, and one has a really low estimate and one has a really high estimate, you got to think and see where is the research and where does the data support that, and then speak to the agent that you like the most about how you can achieve your goals.
Yeah.
So don't just let the agent who tells you maybe fibs win. Talk to the people that you get along with the most and see what you can do from there, because often I am pricing things a little bit low because I want to make sure that we're working realistically within the market.
Yeah, 100%. I think to sum it up best, ultimately, a person's only going to pay as much as what they're willing to pay for a property, and no matter how much you think a property's worth, it'll be whatever the market determines it to be. A homeowner can use all of these important tools, from doing research with other agents to looking at the portals and all that sort of stuff, to ultimately get the best price for their property.
That's right. But if you're at home and you're going to try and sell it yourself, you can always get some appraisals and then still decide to sell it yourself, and you have some information there. But also, the price that you start with doesn't have to be the price that you end with.
100%.
So if you're advertising it yourself, you can add a price guide, so a price range if it's legal in wherever you're selling. So you could say, I really want $830, but I'm hoping for a little bit more. So maybe I do a price range of $815 to $845 and see how you go.
Is the tactic of starting at a higher price, for example, and then having it sort of negotiate down, is that a good tactic to do as well?
So there are different theories to it. So if you price a property perfectly, you might have multiple offers, which can organically increase the price you're going to get. And you can decrease your time on market. So you've got to always come back to, as I'll always come back to, what you're looking to do and what your goals
Yeah.
are. So ultimately, you getting where you need to go is the number one.
Yeah.
The pricing is number two. But you can start a little bit higher. But if you're out of this planet, then I would really rethink that.
Yeah.
So if the pricing around your area is selling between 1 million and 1.1, sit it in there. And it doesn't matter if you're at the higher end of it because people will work with you, but don't put it at 1.25 because it's not in the realm of possibility.
And you'd be disappointed because ultimately you've priced yourself out of the market or your price is just that ridiculous. So using that.
Well, you don't want the only people to be calling you to be other agents.
Yeah, 100%. And you'd be very disappointed as ultimately you've priced yourself out of the market because of not understanding the research correctly.
So I think that an agent is worth their money every day. But I do know that a lot of people, they are considering selling their property themselves, or they just want to have more insight and more information about how the process works. And there might be other agents here looking for a little bit of guidance on where they're going to. So I'm sharing a checklist, which is my 90-day or 12-week checklist, talking about all of the steps that I take to get a property ready for market. I'll hide a cheeky few that are just up my sleeve, but ultimately it should be a nice, easy way for you to start and then get sold.
Excellent. So should we dive right in and unpack this checklist and see what it's all about?
So the first part I can talk you through, I might have to refer to it later, but the first part of my checklist is called activating. So I'm activating that we're selling. Mm-hmm. So what you would do as an owner is decide we're definitely selling. Mm-hmm. So when you're selling it yourself, you're going to prepare the property for sale. So you're going to make sure your home looks schmicko. All the clutter has been hidden in the shed or wherever you can. You've painted your eaves, whatever you have to do. You get it really nice and well done. And you want to speak to...
So just on that activation step, so how far do I need to go to get my property sold? Should I do a full-on renovation of a bathroom or just do a few touch-ups? Like, what do I ultimately need to do to get the best value for my property?
So that advice can be specific to your particular house and your market. So if we're in a seller's market and properties are selling within a couple of days and people are willing to do the work and pay a premium, then you might be best not to do any work. But if you have a property that's really nice and your target buyers are going to be families who don't want to do any work or downsizers, then you should do the work to get the extra money. But you have to do your research to find your target market and get those.
And ultimately, we don't want to overcapitalize on what your investment is. You don't want to put more money in than you know you're going to get out. So it's all about doing your research, talking to other agents, and using those expertise to find out, is putting in a pool, for example, or doing all this fun stuff actually worth it? And am I going to see the return on my investment? So is that all on the activation, or is there a few more things that we need to sort of think about?
So you have to kind of get your property prepared to sell. So you have to speak to a solicitor or conveyancer. You can do your contract yourself, I'm pretty sure. I would not be cutting that cost because the cost is only around $2,000 in New South Wales, and you're going to have an advocate that you can use. So speak to a solicitor or conveyancer, get your contract prepared, and then you're going to want to, once you have your contract, you can start speaking to your neighbours, letting them know you're going to sell because they might know someone who's looking to buy, and that will save you a whole heap of time and stress. So they're the kind of the things that you'll do. So you get your house prepared. You get a contract prepared and you do a little bit of, networking, talking to people around who might be interested. You can also do a little bit of research so that you can start to price your property. So you can go to open homes that are local or buyer inspections, just have a look at that kind of thing. So they're the 4 things that you're going to start with.
Awesome.
There's more on the checklist, but they're the main ones.
And so are we into marketing it, or is that the next step?
Next step. So next step is we're preparing and designing. So I guess you're going to be really helpful for this. So as you know, when you're preparing your property, so you've got it all schmicko, it looks great. How would a seller who's selling them their own home, how would they approach photography? Are there photographers that they could reach out to?
So yeah, 100%. That's obviously where we shine. Yes, in the space of photographers, there is such thing as a real estate photographer these days. Gone are the days where you'd reach out to any photographer who do work. There's people that actually understand and know architecture and real estate photography. So it's all about doing your research and finding photographers in your local area. Now, of course, you can ask a wedding photographer or another type of photographer, but they may not have the expertise and they may not have the understanding and knowledge on what actually looks good, where to start, and how to ultimately tell the right story on what it is that you're trying to offer and sell. We can help you guide through the process. So come and talk to us, and we're going to guide you through whether or not you just need photography, whether photography and floor plan is the way to go, photography, floor plan, and a virtual tour or a video, all of those sort of things, and what each one of those values are worth in how you want to go in your home selling journey. Now, we're not here to sell you extra product if you don't need it, and hopefully others aren't doing that either, but they're obviously going to give you good advice on what people are looking at, what trends are forming at the moment, and all that fun stuff to get your property sold.
And what do you think, now that we have the expert in the room, about if people are going to use, so I've seen ads for software where they say you can take your own professional photography for a couple of bucks and they'll edit it. So what do you think about that versus a few $100s or up to $1,000?
That's a really great question. Look, I'm not saying that, come to the experts first, because that's the best way it is. But, if you're on a budget or you have a bit of experience or it's just a bit of a hobby and something that you actually want to try and do, I 100% recommend you trying one of these portals. But what I see is, a bad photo, even edited, is still going to be a bad photo. The reason you come to an expert is because we can see a room in a way that you may not have thought of before, or at an angle that tells a better story that you, again, can't see. And that's what you're paying for with the expertise of the photography we're doing. But, hey, iPhone photography these days are getting really good and up there, as long as you're taking the right tips and precautions to make sure your photos can look the absolute best they can. And it's not just about pointing the right angle. It's also about thinking about what are the objects in the room, what clutter is there, how are you going to move objects to give the best view of the space, what angle are you going to take. All those things are hugely important factors. And if you're willing to give that a go and do your own research, then you'll get a great result. But if you're also think this is just way too complicated, that's why we're here to help you with that process.
Yeah. And one thing that I would always recommend is get a floor plan. Selling a house without a floor plan is just a bad idea.
Oh, 100%. I hate seeing listings without a floor plan. If your listing doesn't have a floor plan, I immediately flick on. I don't even give it a second look. So that point alone makes your listing drop down the potential list of being sold, because it could be a great property. But if no one knows how to walk around it, understand how spaces connect, understand ultimately, how big the room sizes is, and if furniture can fit in your lifestyle with what you've already got, floor plans help do that in a very simple way, and they are often overlooked very quickly as a result. So 100% definitely recommend a floor plan. A big thing to consider when you are choosing either professional or us yourself is you're ultimately one of thousands of listings. How is your listing going to stand out when a person is scrolling through the hundreds of homes that they've got to go look through at open homes this week? What makes your property stand out? And this could be through photography. It could be through an awesome video. It could be even the ad copy that is created. How are you going to make yours stand out? We can help you with that. We can help you because we have the experience and understanding how to find and what to look for the best features of your property.
Right. And so what I would do is, when you've got your photography, you have to go through and make sure that it's showing what you want, and cull the photos that don't serve what you're trying to sell.
So just pause you there. A really good point to mention with the listing portals is that we're seeing about 8 to 16 and 20 photos, no more than about 25 to 30 photos in absolute total. And we've created our product around that to make sure that we give you the absolute perfect shot, enough photos that will tell you the right amount of story. So you can just take the photos and put them straight up on the listing portals. Anything more than that will either become overshooting areas that aren't going to be flattering to the property, or giving alternate angles that, again, that other angle would probably be stronger in that case to tell the story of the property.
Although I do like to have 30 properties on mine, but that's because I include drone, and I do like a couple of lifestyle shots.
Yeah.
And that is based on the feedback in our area.
Yeah,
So
100%.
it can change depending on your area.
So just making a really clear point also on lifestyle photos. What are they? And you may hear this term lifestyle or feature shots or close-up angles. What's the difference between that? Well, the difference is a lifestyle photo is something that you're in the moment and you're actually telling a story, and it's a crafted message within that photo. So the difference is you can take a wide shot of a living room and that just shows the space as its entirety. If you take a photo of a window with a coffee table and a single chair, you're then telling a story where you're looking out into that grand old space and making the prospective buyer feel emotion when they're actually looking at your property. What we too often or not, we see photos of a tap or a sink or a close-up of a pot plant, and that's part of the listing photo. That doesn't tell anything, and it's actually, I find from from potential buyers when I'm talking to them, that they just get so frustrated and annoyed that you have these photos there that actually are not useful at all to the listing and don't tell you a story. You've wasted one shot on a flower pot rather than actually something that's important. So that's the big difference between lifestyle. It's telling not the furniture, not the object, but how that object relates in the space that which you are in, and how is that evoking emotion and telling a story ultimately.
All right, cool. So the next part of the design and coming soon kind of program is you want to get your copywriting done. So you have to write some text about your property. It's important to remove all of your emotion from that. So you can say that it has a really nice sunny deck, but you don't want to say a lovely sunny deck where I spent all my childhood. You want to make sure that it's written from a perspective of a buyer.
Ultimately, information with a bit of flair. You want to write about the property in a way that is exciting but not too emotional, but again, gets the facts across. That's what, at the end of the day, what we're after, getting those facts across. So with these writing, is there tools that we can use these days, and sort of how do we get an ad ultimately written? Or
There's heaps of tools out there. You can go onto any AI software. Obviously, you have to do a little bit of Googling, but there's so much software available. So I would just Google
ChatGPT.
I didn't know we should say that because, it's very, what's the word, fiery, fiery topic.
Of course, it is a little bit of a topic, of course, ChatGPT, but it's not something that's going to do the job 100% for you, but it is something that you can use as a starting base. Get on your notes and thoughts and collection and ask ChatGPT, how do you start to write this? And then, of course, whatever the output is from there, ultimately finesse it to get the best response that ultimately you think works, and then also what you've seen based on what you've read through other listings.
And actually, a really good thing while we're on ChatGPT is when you're creating your copywriting, you can actually ask it questions. So you could say, these are the dot points on my property. What kind of buyer am I going to attract, and how should I create my copywriting and my marketing elements to support that? And ChatGPT could probably give you some really handy tips on what to do and how to format your copywriting.
Do you think gone to the days where we need to hire an actual copywriter and ChatGPT or these AI things do it for us, or what are your thoughts?
Still use copywriters sometimes. So I have a very solid, awesome format for my copywriting. But if I have a really special property where I'm going to attract someone who's actually going to read the copywriting, because a lot of people don't read the copywriting. So just say I'm going to go into print media, or I'm selling 5,000 acres on a property that has never been listed before, something like that. Maybe I'm selling an old governor's house. I'm not sure. Then I will use a professional copywriter who can tell that story.
Yes.
But if
okay.
if I'm just going on realestate.com.au and Domain or All Homes, most of the time, the statistics that I have is that people don't really read. So you have three paragraphs of, lovely content, dot points, and that's it.
Awesome.
And you just want to make sure that you have as much information on your portals as you can. But we're not at the portals yet.
So just finishing off copywriting. So what other tips do you sort of recommend? We've got removing emotion out of the ad copy, but what else do you recommend? What else needs to be included?
I always like to include all of the key features of a home. So if there's multiple living spaces, or a really big shed and workshop, or there's solar power that makes your bill, virtually nothing, whatever it is, just what what your buyers are going to appreciate. Always remember that your buyers are the one that are holding your funds, and you want to coax them into giving them to you.
Yeah.
So remember, what are they going to appreciate, and who are your target buyers?
Yeah. So with your ad copy, ultimately, you want to try and focus on, a really good tip is focus on what you think the absolute best feature of the property is. Is it the views? Is it the location? Is it a renovated kitchen, bathroom, living area, for example? Hone in on that and make that the opening paragraph of your ad copy. Because like Peter said, if people don't read ad copy as it is these days, so getting them hooked right on the beginning. That's what it is. It's a hook. Use that hook phrase to get people ultimately interested in reading through your listing and finding out all about your property.
So the next thing that you want to do, what I would do is I would have all of my information and data collected. So you have your contract. If you're going to get a building and pest inspection, get it done. Know your block size, your zoning, all of that kind of thing, and have it in a folder or a brochure. Create something so that you can refer to it, because you're not going to remember everything.
Just on the pest inspection. So in ACT, obviously, it is compulsory to have, but in New South Wales, do we need it? Is it a good thing to have? Like, why do I need a inspection report done?
So as an agent, I like to make myself the easiest person to buy from. Not the cheapest, the easiest. So I make sure that I have a building and pest inspection, contract, rental appraisal, fast features, a comprehensive guide on this property, so that if people are looking at, say, 2 or 3 properties, my property has a building and pest inspection, all of the information they need to make a decision now, and then they have a property that they have to pay a building and pest inspection to consider before they make an offer. They're going to make an offer on mine first.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that is always what I'll recommend, and that's what I do for all of my properties.
So a building and pest inspection is exactly that. It's an inspection of your property, and it's written out in a logical format for a person to understand what the condition of the home is, if there's any dramas, that there's nothing that's hiding, and if there is any dramas, that it's all listed out there, and you as a buyer are making a conscious and informed decision on whether or not this is the right step for you. So that's why it's so important to get this. And ultimately what we want to do, like Peter said, you want to make sure that you are removing any barriers and blocks for a potential buyer to step in and on your home. Because, in New South Wales in particular, it's like you walk in, oh, there's no pest and building done. Oh, okay, it's just another thing I've got to do. Another thing I've got to do to, get it. And it ultimately puts people off wanting to buy a home. So getting it done straight off the bat is key to getting a good, successful marketing campaign.
Be seamless.
Yeah.
And also, what happens if you get your building and pest inspection? So you have an offer made, accepted. They do the building and pest inspection, and there's something that they weren't anticipating, and that you weren't anticipating. Whatever it could be, a leaky bathroom, a bit of termite damage, whatever it is, and they say, well, I don't want to pay that price anymore. You're an agent, you're a person selling your own home. That's going to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
So that's going to cause friction, and when you're trying to sell, you're reducing all the friction.
Yeah, 100%.
So
showing everything up front and not accidentally hiding something is hugely important, and it goes a really long way.
And then the trust is gone between you and that buyer.
And of course your bargaining power is gone as well, because things that you didn't know that came up in the pest inspection, you've now lost any negotiation of going up in price. Everything starts to come down to get this thing, and you've tainted the relationship, of course.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, plus you've wasted time. So
yes.
You have everything ready to go, and all of the information there. You're going to look like you're honest, which is what you want to do. You're going to have fair negotiations. Your buyer is going to be able to pay the full amount of their budget, because they know what to budget for in so far as repairs and that kind of thing. And they're going to trust you, which is so good.
So sick, yes. So what's next? What's next on the list?
The next thing that I would recommend all people to do is a coming soon campaign. So even if you're not an agent and you don't have a database and you don't have existing buyers, so you've done your little door knock to your neighbours, just you can pop around and do a letterbox drop to the whole area. You might be able to do an ad on the radio station. I'm not really sure what people would do when they sell their own home, because obviously we have our own methods. We speak to our database, we do letterbox drops, we speak to our active buyers, we let our whole network know, and usually that will help us get sold. We also have a big coming soon signboard, and we do portal advertisements as well. So on realestate.com.au or Homes, they have a coming soon option. I think that's only available for agents.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do social media advertising. So we do a whole range of it.
So for those of you who don't go through an agency and you're doing it yourself, here's some really top tips that you could really use to help you get your property sold. So number one is using any of those social media Facebook groups, for example, Canberra Buy Swap and Sell, Queanbeyan, Buy Swap and Sell, the Goulburn community page. All those sort of things are a great way that you could list your property up there and create a bit of spark and interest around that. Of course, you've got a printed flyer, go around, do a letterbox drop around your neighborhood and do that. And then finally, of course, word of mouth. You wouldn't believe how important word of mouth is. Hey, I'm putting my property on the market. Do you know anyone who would be interested, or are you interested? All that sort of fun stuff. It goes a really long way into creating a bit of attraction and awareness. And of course, your own social media is hugely important as well. Put it on your own social media channels and go from there. You can always boost it. Facebook has some relatively cheap advertising options where you could boost your property and get it over to more eyes, and that's ultimately how you want to market your property. So you said something about a signboard. Is it important for a homeowner who's selling their own home to think about getting a signboard or coming soon, or is it a wasted cost, do you think?
Well, it's never a wasted cost. Hear me out.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote about this in my book for new agents to always do a coming soon campaign, well, coming soon signboard. So imagine this. There is Tom and Sue that live around the corner from you, and they've driven past your house every day on the way to work, and they think, oh God, I love that house. And they've been renovating their house for a while, but they just love your house. Whatever it is about your house, they love it. And so then they see your signboard go up, and Tom and Sue are like, wow, we're nearly finished our renovations. How about we call these people and see if they're looking to buy? They pay top dollar because they love your house.
Yeah.
They've driven past it every day. They've spoken to their neighbours. And so you've got a great offer. All you have to do is wait for them to sell, which probably won't take very long because they've renovated their house and they're ready to go. And you get 6 months or 3 months, whatever you need to pack up and move and get on with it. So you have a great relationship with Tom and Sue. They pay full asking price or maybe a little bit more to secure it. And that's perfect.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but having a coming soon sign and the actual sales sign, are they two different signs or are they the same thing?
So I used to have them as one, so I used to peel it off.
Okay.
But because I have I'm selling more properties now, I just move my coming soon signboard around.
Yeah, gotcha.
So you can you could probably offer it as well.
So something that we do with our signage supplier is we get them to pre-install a sticker that has coming soon over the top of the words for sale. So you can have one signboard, save yourself a bit of cost, of course, and put up a sign. And then when you're ready to actually go live, you can peel it off. You could even go one step further. And if you're doing an auction campaign or something like that, you could put coming soon, auction sticker, and then pull off the auction sticker if your auction falls through to have a full sale. And then all you need to do finally from that is ask your signage supplier about getting a predetermined sold sticker, whatever that may be. That's also a very important thing to consider as well. Now, we won't go too much into it, but at a bare minimum, what should someone have on their signboard?
A phone number.
Yep.
And for sale. You really don't need more than that.
Yep.
But you can also have a link or a QR code so that people can view photos. Depends on how tech savvy you are. You should have a photo of the inside of your house on your signboard. Mm-hmm. Have I missed anything?
So it's an interesting topic, I think, with signboards, because ultimately, at the beginning, we've got to think about what the use of the signboard is. It's a piece of marketing material, but it's a very fast piece of marketing material. And when I mean fast, you as a person driving by or driving down the street have got 3 to 5 seconds in total to see everything you need to see on that signboard. So what information are you going to put there that's going to draw enough attention to make them want to stop to read it? Now, of course, you've got people walking by and things like that, but the foot traffic is way lower than the driven traffic that you would see driving around on the streets looking at property. So at a bare minimum, I would make sure we have the address of the property, and if it has a property name, 1 to 3 photos maximum on the property, and then totally up to you whether or not you want to go in depth about some dot points on what are the top features of the property. But now we're getting into the realms of it's becoming a bit overwhelming and a lot in these signboards. So that's what we've seen. And we've seen so much in the last 6 years of signboards that are extremely complicated, all the way to signboards that are just very minimalist branding, a photo and a logo and a contact name. So it's totally up to you. But again, coming back to ultimately think about what is the purpose and the methodology behind why a signboard exists and what information you're going to put there to capture people's eyes and attention as quickly as possible.
On the signboard, so Lee Woodward, who's a great trainer, he actually said the best thing that you can do is put the address on the signboard. And I never thought about doing it before, but if you're not from town, just say I'm driving into Canberra and looking in Queanbeyan, and I don't know where I am, having the address means it's easy for people to look up.
Yeah, 100%. So that's everything for creating the content in terms of marketing. There's one key piece of the puzzle that I think we're missing, which is listing portals. What listing portals should I use? How many listing portals should I put it on? And where do I go from here and what do I do?
Okay, so if you haven't sold before you get to the coming soon, like before this stage, then you should advertise your property. How you decide to advertise your property is up to you, and also up to your budget. So you save money theoretically on an agent, and theoretically on marketing. Perhaps it might be the place where you invest a little bit of money to getting onto as many portals as possible. So I don't know how much it costs in each area. You can call realestate.com.au, Domain, or Homes, then go, there's a number for selling by owner. You can call them and ask. So I would weigh up, when you speak with them, ask them, what's their traffic like, what market share do they have. So if, say, realestate.com.au is $2,000 and Domain is $500, but realestate.com.au gets 75% of the market share, then you might just buy one. Your agent should get on all of them because that's their job.
Yeah. Yep.
But you can do it staged. So you can try one, and then if no luck, you can go on the others.
Yeah, 100%. So, and ultimately, it's up to you on how much you want to market a property or the type of strategy that you're looking for in terms of, do you want to do all at once or one at a time, or does your buyer go in the direction of that portal, and how that all works.
It's also important to know, because I think I might disagree with you here, that you don't have to be on the portals.
Okay.
You can sell property. Well, maybe owner sellers will have a little bit more trouble, but our agency sells a third of our properties without the portals.
Yeah.
So
see, it pays to have a real estate agent because they have these databases of people that are interested in property that may be perfect fit for your property, and you may not even have to spend any money on marketing fees at all.
So it's a marketing effort, not just one single strategy, but I think most people, if they're selling their own home, they will probably have to go to the
Ultimately, you want to spread the net as wide as possible, getting enough eyeballs on the property to find the right buyer. And how you do that through the strategy of social media, through a database, through listing portals, all of these things come into play to getting the right price. And it's also dependent on the interest that you're seeing. So if you're seeing lots of interest in the Coming Soon campaign, then you may not need to spend as much money when it comes to actually putting your property on the market. Or if you're not, then you go into that sort of strategy from there.
All right, Pat, we're going to flip the script here. We're going to ask you about, you sold a house around 5 years ago.
Yep.
So tell me how you went with the open homes and the inspections and what you thought about that whole process.
So I'm going to cheat a little. We sold our property right in the height of COVID. I would say it was a pretty dream run and a pretty lucky fit with how we got our property sold. So we ultimately went to two different agents. One was a good friend of mine and one was a local supplier here in Canberra. Now, we were very close to jumping on board with the local guy here, but ultimately we made the decision to go with a good friend of mine to get our property sold. And basically, we didn't have to do open homes. We didn't have to do all of that sort of stuff. In fact, we actually did one open home. We did the first open home. It hit the market on Monday, and then we had our first inspection on the Saturday, and then by Monday the following week, the property was sold. So we had a pretty dream one. So I can't really use it as what we did, but ultimately what happened was we had the local guy in town said to one of their potential buyers that she missed out on a property that they were selling previously, and that where our property happened to be a really good fit. So they recommended us to have a look at it and check it out, and she ultimately was the buyer. So bing bang done, and that was our property selling experience. So yeah.
Like Cinderella story.
Yeah, it was a Cinderella story in terms of the way it worked. So the advice we were given on our property and the way that we said that we were going to market ours, which was it was going to run on a 4-week campaign, and it was set at a perfect open time at the same time every Saturday to get sold. And that's something you've got to consider, right? If you're creating open times for your property, when is that going to fall to when you think the type of buyer that you want to come in to see your property is going to work? So for example, if it's a family property, you want to put it just after weekend sports or swimming or soccer or whatever it may be, so they can come in and do that because families are out and active on the weekend. So sorting in with that. Another option is to look at when other properties that are like yours fall in their open times and sort of slot yours in before or after, so you can then have comparatives between them that are sort of in the local area. So what are the things that you do as a real estate agent that go into making a really good open home?
My theory is, when does the house look the best?
Yep.
And also, what your target buyer is doing. So if you've got families, you might actually want to do your open homes not on a Saturday, do it on a Sunday or a Friday afternoon, around 4 o'clock, because there's no sports then.
Yeah.
And both partners are usually home at that time, if that's your target buyer.
Yeah.
But definitely, when does the house look the best? So if you're selling in winter and you want to have an afternoon open home, does your house look good in the
because of the sunlight and that sort of stuff? Yeah, that's really important.
You don't want your house to be dark and dreary. You want it to be light filled and airy as much as possible.
So what are some things that you do, Peter, that goes into a open home and creating an awesome experience? Tell us some of your secrets.
I don't really have any secrets. I'm happy to share them all. So I guess you want to think of your buyers, their senses. So as much as you can, you want it to be quiet. So if you know your neighbour's lawn mow at 8 a.m. every Saturday, don't do an early open home.
Yep.
You want dogs to be quiet, so go treat all the neighbourhood dogs so that they're not overwhelmed by sound, because it can be very distracting.
Yep.
You want your whole kind of frontage, if you have frontage, to be clean and tidy, so people aren't tripping over things, they know where to park. If you're expecting people to come and you've got a tight street, figure out somewhere for them to park and just let your neighbours know so they're not going to be screaming at them. If you've got
100%.
Also, you want the house to smell good, feel good, so it needs to be inviting. So if you're someone who doesn't turn lights on and doesn't run the air conditioner, you have to fix that and make sure that you do. So all the lights are on. It's as bright as possible. If you have, a room that looks into your neighbour's toilet, pull the blind down in that room.
Yeah.
Show light in all the other rooms. Just kind of highlight the key features. You can light a candle if you want, but nothing gross. Simple sense. I personally don't really like candles that much because people these days, they don't want to be bombarded by
sensors and the overall overloadness, I'd say, of sensors.
Caramel latte, whatever people are doing now. You just want it to be nice. But, mop your floors and vacuum. You can have some music on in the background, nice and ambient. That does help as well. And have heaps of information available for these buyers. A lot of the time buyers are coming through, and if you're selling your own home, they are going to feel a little bit uncomfortable because they're talking directly to the owner. So they're not going to want to ask questions. They're not going to want to look in cupboards. So let them know you can look in the cupboards. Feel welcome. Also, having that information available in a printed form that they can take home with them, so that they don't have to ask you what's included or is your price negotiable. Have it all written down so that way they can reflect on that later.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. You can't actually underestimate how important it is to have print material these days. We are in the world of digital revolution, and we as our own office in our business try and run a zero printing space. But I wanted to reiterate that having something physical that has all the information there, all at your fingertips, and you can actually compare apples to apples and spread them out on your dining table when you get home after the open homes, goes a really long way in getting your property to be eyes number one, as opposed to trying to remember things after the fact. So yeah, really good top tip there. So of course, open homes are one strategy that you can use, but there's also other methods that you can use as well to, have people inspect your property and that sort of stuff. So let's have a quick chat about those.
So you can have by appointment. So people can contact you and arrange an inspection at their convenience. So if you're selling your own home, this could be a good idea. I think it would kind of minimize it will minimize the number of buyers, but it will minimize the number of looky-loos that you'll have.
Yes.
I think ultimately you also have to decide how you're going to treat the buyers when they attend your property. So are you going to walk with each buyer through each part of the house, or are you going to let them walk around and roam and feel free to discuss amongst themselves? So you have to have a strategy about how you're going to handle that. Agents all have their own different styles, and we tend to jump around depending on
The situation that it presents itself.
That's
Yeah.
right. So if you're not well versed in this, you just have to decide, so what is going to be my structure in this?
And these could be ultimately, you're the type of person who stands out at the front of the home and lets the potential buyer expect it. Or this could be, walking through the property and giving running commentary every step of the way. But you've got to read the situation and understand what methodology you're going to use when talking to this potential buyer on how they sell the home. And it's always a feeling that you'll see based on how interested they are.
That's exactly right. If you're selling your own home, I would highly suggest just wait at the front and have a look. They can always ask you questions later, and that kind of shows that you are detached from the process, which will give you a little bit more credibility as an owner. But ultimately, you have to decide. And so based on how you're going to handle it, then you would have inspections and open homes accordingly. It's always a good idea to do at least one open home so you can see if you like it, and you might get more buyers come through. But ultimately, you have to be comfortable with it.
That's awesome. So what's next? If it sells, great, awesome, it's sold. If it doesn't sell, what do we do, and how do we move forward from this situation?
Well, So there's a strategy. So what are we talking about timeline-wise? It doesn't sell after 1 week, or it doesn't sell after 1 year?
Well, so let's start there. Where is a good point? Like, how do we know how long the property needs to stay on the market for in order to get sold?
So you'll have to know your average days on market in your area. I think that you can find that information from, realestate.com.au or on the house, or, just a Google search. And so then you'll know, well, if it takes 90 days to 100 days to sell a property, I can kind of allow that. So you'd have a process. So the checklist that I'm going to provide, it talks you through, well, at the 4-week mark, you will consider making a pricing adjustment.
Yep.
And then at the 8-week mark, you'll do the same. And you invest in extra bits of marketing along the way. So you might say, we'll do realestate.com.au only for 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, we'll adjust the price based on any feedback we get, because it's important that you listen to what people tell you. And so if they're saying, it's $20,000 too expensive, refine the price, increase the marketing, and continue on.
Gotcha.
And so you have to keep the campaign fresh, because otherwise it gets stale. And then if you get feedback that you have to change something to get more viewers, then change it, update it, and carry on.
I just want to make a point about keeping it stressed. What do you mean? Are you talking about a photo? Are you talking about a marketing tactic? Are you talking about how you approach it? Like
all of it.
All of it,
so
right.
It starts with your energy.
Yeah.
So if you start getting sick of selling a property after 2 weeks, there's no way you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that energy. And real estate agents, we really work really hard on our mindset, because if a property, just say for me, it takes 12 weeks to sell most of my properties. So I have to show up every week, multiple times a week, speak to all those buyers, and I have to keep the same level of energy.
Yeah.
If you're not a professional in that, you have to make sure that you're refreshing your energy and you're committed to the.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's not just about how the property is going to get sold, but it's how the mindset and how you're going to show up each week and get this asset sold to the best of your ability.
And it doesn't always have to be a new approach, but sometimes you just need a new photo, or you might not have a floor plan yet, even though we've told you to get one. So get one now.
Yeah.
And so you follow this. So all of the things that I'm including in the checklist, they're just a recommendation. You don't have to follow them, but just spruce it up and keep it going. You can rotate the photos. There's lots of things that you can do to kind of
Make that happen.
And then on top of that, I guess we can talk about what happens if you do get an offer. But if you have reduced the price, you've reduced the whole thing throughout, and you've made changes along the way, and you still aren't sold, then there are 3 things that you can control: the pricing, the presentation, and I guess the process. So how you're handling your buyer inquiries. So if you feel like you have priced the property appropriately, and you've presented the property appropriately, you might have missed some buyers or mishandled your buyers. So they're the 3 things you can control as an agent. They're what I can control as well. And you always come back to those basics. So pricing, presentation, process.
Awesome. So is that it for the checklist? Are we done? Are we ultimately we're trying to get it sold? And have we sold it? Are we done?
Well, I think a big part of what people don't understand or what people don't realize that an agent does is once you get an offer or once a buyer is interested, then what?
Yeah.
So we're going to quickly run through, I guess, what you do. So I'm selling my house. You know, I've listed it for $1 million, my lovely acreage property that we discussed earlier. I decided those agents both sucked. I'm going to do it myself. So I get it. You come through, Pat, and you make an offer. Make me an offer on my $1 million property.
1.1.
You take... That's over the asking price.
Oh, well, there you go.
And I'm already arguing them down. But okay, so what do we do when we get to that offer? Like, surely you've...
Okay, I'll do it again.
No.
Okay.
1.1. Okay, great. So then how do I respond to that? Are they making that offer in person? Because what you don't realize is often if you made 1.1 and I'm like, yeah, let's do it, you're going to think, whoa, did I offer too much?
Yeah.
So you have to just kind of go through a process. So they make an offer, get it in writing so that you know what it is, figure out what their terms are. Like, do they have pre-approval? Do they have a conveyancer? How long do they need to settle and move and what kind of things?
Play it cool, I think, is what you're trying to say there, because you may scare them off by jumping in too quickly on your approach to answer them. And because ultimately you don't want to freak them out. You don't want to go, oh, did I make them think, did I put too much or too little in this by how quickly you respond to the whole situation. So, of course, just play it cool, yeah?
The first thing to do is take a deep breath and just say, I'm going to need that in writing. So you get all offers in writing, whether you're an agent or not. And then you go from there. So once you get an offer, you've got it in writing, you have all their details, you let your solicitor know, and the solicitors will do all the talking. The good thing about that, you've already done the negotiations. Let them handle that kind of thing and follow their lead. And then from there, you might be able to put a sold sticker on your signboard or you can remove it. There's a few more things to do, but ultimately how you handle your offers, and especially if the offers are low. So if your offer is not where I need it to be, still get it in writing and then just ask them, is there any room to move there? And work out how you're going to negotiate to get that.
Hey, we're sold. Perfect. Well done. Well, I think on that note, let's wrap up today's episode. I think there's some really great tips here on things that we can do to get our property ready, how we use this checklist, and ultimately get our property sold within 90 days. That's Peter. I'm Pat. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.